What up, leader? Welcome to video number 2 in this Insights Discovery series, video series. So in video number 1, we gave a brief history of Carl Jung and what we call Jungian theory, and we identified the 3 functions that Carl Jung came up with, and we showed you how those functions helped us to form the basic discovery wheel. And so in forming that basic discovery wheel, we introduced color characteristics and both good day and bad day. We talked about opposites, the pairs of opposites associated with that basic discovery wheel. And we talked about the fact that we all have these colors circulating on the inside of us, which is meaningful, right? Because when you think about connecting with people who are like us or different than us, we need to know that all of those colors are circulating on the inside of us. So, if you have not watched that foundational video number 1 in the series, press pause on me, go watch video number 1 in this series, and don't worry, I will wait for you here until you get back, but it lays the foundation for everything that we're going to talk about today in video number 2. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. My name is Reggie Carney. I am the CEO, founder, and lead coach here at Lead Strong Incorporated. Our work is with leaders, teams, and organizations. And our goal is to help them ultimately accomplish what they want to accomplish. And what we use is this whole approach and system that speaks directly to emotionally intelligent leadership, which calls for us to flex and to adapt and to be agile in our leadership so that we can maintain those connections, so that we can build the community, so that ultimately we can accomplish everything that we dreamed of accomplishing. Before we get started with Colors in Action, where we actually get down to the nitty-gritty of emotionally intelligent leadership, make sure you subscribe to the Lead Strong YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of the videos in this very powerful video series. So today's video is going to build on the foundation that we laid in the basic discovery wheel video, and we're going to show you how to take this system and use it in a very practical way to be adaptive, to be agile, and to be flexible in our day-to-day interactions with individuals, with our team, and with the organization, which is ultimately what helps us to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. Let's start by defining what color in action means. So what I used to say in describing this part of our debrief journey was I used to call this the snapshot, the graphical snapshot. And it is a snapshot initially because we're looking at static color energies here. But where the action really occurs and where emotionally intelligent really resides is in the dynamic movement of these color energies as we connect, as we relate, as we partner with individuals, with teams, and with the organization at a high level to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So if you've taken the Insights Discovery Assessment and you have your report, go ahead and break that out. If you don't have an Insights Discovery report, click the link in the description below where there will be more information. Now that you have your report, go ahead and open it to Insights Color Dynamics page. And we're going to focus at the top where we've got the series of 3 graphs. To the far left, we've got the persona conscious graph, which I like to refer to as my onstage me, my game face me, my professional mode me, right? And that graph comes directly from your input in the evaluator. You likely spent 15, 20, or 25 minutes on that evaluator mapping these words into most like me, least like me, and then options in the middle. So you see a color hierarchy associated with that conscious persona. So in that conscious persona graph, you see all 4 of those colors represented. That reinforces the point that we made in the basic discovery wheel conversation, in that we all have all of these colors represented within us. And you can see that in this conscious persona graph. You also see that there is a hierarchy, and this is where that dominant language comes from, because the color that's represented most is your dominant color energy, followed by the second color energy. We call that the secondary color energy, secondary preference. And then that third, we call that the tertiary. And then we have a least preferred. So you have some hierarchy, and it is possible to be tied at any given level of that hierarchy conversation. You also see in that conscious persona graph that there is a line labeled 3 on that conscious persona graph. That line represents a demarcation, right? So if your color energies are above that line, that means that you can access those color energies. You can use them, you can adapt over to them with relative ease. It's a very natural thing for you. It's a very spontaneous thing for you. It happens with a level of ease if it's above that line. If it's below the line, it's just the opposite, right? So if it's immediately above that, below that 3 line, it means that you can access or use these color energies with relative ease. Now, if the color energies are below the lines, depending on the degree below the line, it's a little harder for you to reach down and to access that energy, to use that energy, to call it up when you need it. Now, obviously, if it's close to that line and it's under that line, it might be a little easier, but as it falls lower and lower below that line, it's a little bit more difficult for you to access and to use that energy. And it may cause a little bit of anxiety or stress or consternation in situations where you have to use that energy. So this conscious persona graph is the graph that we use in the work that we do at Lead Strong, because this is how you and I show up publicly. So when you go to work, we're not performing in a negative sense, but we are showing up in the way that we want people to see us, right, and to experience us. So this is the one that we focus on. So now we move to the less conscious persona, which represents the indirect result of your input into the evaluator that you spent 15, 20, or 25 minutes on. And this represents the more natural and instinctive you and me, right? So in situations where we don't feel like we need to be on, or we need to be performing, or we could care less about, who's watching us, this is the person that we are. And you can also see that there's a hierarchy there. All colors are represented, even in that less conscious persona. And there's also a hierarchy with that 3 line. So same meaning. If those color energies are above the line, they're more accessible, readily accessible in your interactions. And if they're below the line, to the degree that they're below that line, it's going to be more and more difficult for you to access those energies. So if you were to show up at my house unannounced, right, you might find me in this less conscious persona state, because I'm in that moment, I'm not on and I'm not ready, right, to show myself publicly. So here's the thing. You might find when you look at these 2 graphs, you've got the conscious persona and you've got the less conscious persona, you might find that your hierarchy lineup, right, your dominant, secondary, tertiary, and least preferred are exactly the same. In those cases, we say you are who you are, right, and there's no change. So if I pop up on you unexpected, then you're going to be the same person privately as you are publicly. So it is possible for those graph hierarchies to be different, which means that I have a different dominant, different secondary, different tertiary, and different least preferred in those 2 graphs. I'm a good example of that, because I was trained as an electrical engineer. I was educated as an electrical engineer, which is a lot of blue energy, right? Systems, process, structure. I also was pretty competitive, and I was an athlete as a kid, so I had a pretty good amount of red energy as well. So in my less conscious persona graph, you're going to see a red dominant followed by a blue dominant, because that was kind of how I was wired, right? But now I've evolved into this very human world of leadership development and organizational development and public speaking. I've had to dial up my yellow energy, social, outgoing. There's an entertainment factor associated with that yellow energy. I've also had to dial up that green energy, being genuine, connecting with people, being interested in individuals, to truly be able to speak collectively to my audience. The reality is, when I'm speaking to a group or facilitating, whether it's 30 people, 300 people, or 3,000 people, I have to tap dance around those color energies to make sure that I'm making meaningful connections with everybody in my audience. So those are the conscious persona and the less conscious persona graphs. The middle graph is a very interesting graph, and we spend some time having conversation around this preference flow graph. So what it does, so defining the preference flow graph, is it actually gives us a snapshot. In fact, the conscious persona and the less conscious personas, they actually start out as a snapshot before they become colors in action, because we're all dynamic human beings, living and operating in a dynamic world. And so those color energies are moving. And so when we talk about adaptability and agility and flexibility, we're talking about those colors becoming dynamic. And that's what we mean by colors in action, right? So the preference flow gives us a snapshot of our transition from less conscious persona over to conscious persona. And so I'm on stage quite a bit, and the reference that I use to describe that preference flow is when I'm coming from this place where I'm not performing, I'm not on, I don't have my game face on, how much energy and effort does it require for me to climb on stage to get up to that conscious persona place? And so the energy movement in that preference flow represents how hard it is or how easy it is for me to go from less conscious to conscious persona. So in that preference flow graph, the arrows can either point up or the arrows can point down. And if you think about it as an energy bank account, right? When the arrows are pointing upward, it means that when you make that transition from less conscious to conscious, that there is a withdrawal that you're taking because it requires energy for you to get on stage. Now, it doesn't for everyone, but for many of us, it requires some energy to go from less conscious to conscious. You may have felt this when you've been on a week-long vacation, and you've been out at the beach, and you've been in the mountains, or you've been hiking and doing all of this fun stuff. Well, on Sunday night, there's sometimes a knot in our stomach when we have to go back to work. That means that transition is actually happening. That energy transfer is actually happening in that moment when you are dreading going back to work. That means those arrows are pointed up, and it's requiring something for you to get that game face on, or on that in that professional mode. If the arrows are pointed down, that means you're actually depositing some energy back into the bank account as you make that transition. For instance, sometimes in certain situations professionally, I have to turn down some of my blue energy, structure, systems, process, analysis, when I go into certain professional environments. Because sometimes my blue energy can overwhelm a situation, it can slow a situation, or sometimes bring it to a screeching halt with too much of that blue energy. So in some situations I have to turn it down. And so that's an example of putting some of that energy back in the account, because for whatever reason you've discovered that you have to pull back on it in that professional environment. So the the very meaningful conversations that we have with this preference flow is, first of all, which of these color energies are easy for you to access as you move from less conscious to conscious? Because those are easy, those are natural for you, they're automatic. The danger there, though, is that we get into overuse. And so that's the watch out. And so the process conversation that we have to have when those colors are easy for you to access, right, in that preference flow, is how do we guard against overuse for those colors? The other conversation that we have in that preference flow is which ones are difficult for you. You might have colors that are below the bar, below that 3 bar in each of your graphs, your conscious persona and your less conscious persona. But inevitably, you're going to have times and situations and with certain people that you're going to need to access those colors. So you're going to need to draw up those colors. You're going to need to step in and to use those colors. So when it's difficult, right? When they are perhaps like far below that line, it's gonna cause anxiety, it's gonna cause stress, it's gonna cause uncertainty, frustration, and other things. And we know that when we experience stress and anxiety and frustration, those are the moments where we have what I like to call, and you may have heard of this, out of character moments. We behave in ways that don't align with who we are as individuals. Well, the reason why we're having these conversations is because we want to put processes and systems and structure in place that will help us manage those instances where we're feeling anxious or we're feeling more stress than the normal healthy stress, or that or those frustrations. And so if we have the right systems in place, then we can stay connected to people. We can be healthy in our partnerships and ultimately continue to move our cause forward within our team and with our organization. So going back to my own story, speaking publicly was not a very natural thing for me. In fact, I would go as far as to say it was a terrifying thing for me. So being an engineer with a lot of blue energy, a lot of red energy, and having to adapt over to this place where I'm speaking and I'm facilitating and I'm coaching, inevitably I had to dial up, as I said earlier, that yellow energy, that entertainment factor, that very social and talkative elements of that, characteristics of that yellow energy, being able to make meaningful connections, being concerned, considerate, and caring in that green energy. So one of the processes that I had to put in place for myself to get myself ready for those moments that in many cases felt very unnatural for me. One of the things that I do is I have a morning workout, which helps me to release endorphins and to settle myself and help me to move into that space that was not a natural strength. But the other thing that I do that really helps me to step into this sunshine yellow energy is I have this segment that I do in the mornings, and it's called What's Making Me Tick segment of my day. And tick is spelled T-I-C, and what I do is I actually talk out loud about things that I'm thankful for, things that have recently inspired me, and then positive choices that I'm going to make for the day. So as a person who leans more heavily toward introversion, if you go back and think about the basic discovery wheel, I don't naturally get as many words in as a natural extrovert. So that what's making me tick component of my morning fueling process, that helps me to get my word count up. It helps me to warm up. It helps me to step into this place where I'm communicating more naturally, more instinctively, and more loosely as I engage with individuals, groups, or audiences. So that's a system, that's a process that I have in place to manage the stress or the anxiety associated with me having to draw on that yellow energy, that very outward, creative, and passionate and energetic energy. So our work is putting the right systems in place, right? First of all, for those energies that are a lot easier for us to access and to use, we've got to have systems that will guard against overuse, that awareness and being able to manage self in those situations. On that side where it's harder for us to tap into and to use certain energies, we've got to put processes and systems in place to guard against anxiety and stress and frustration, because those are the moments where we alienate people, we push people away, we create space in relationships. So in those instances, we're not on the same page, we're not singing from the same sheet of music, and inevitably we're not going to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish in the organization. So that's the end of video 2 in this Insights Discovery series, where we've been talking about and exploring colors in action. Remember, if you have not taken the assessment and you want to report, go ahead and click on the link in the description below where there will be more information. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, because you don't want to miss any of the videos that are forthcoming in this video series. In our last video, my question to you at the end of that video was, which color energy did you think was your dominant color energy? At the end of video number 2, my question to you is, which color energy do you believe represents your least preferred color energy? That color energy that might cause a little stress, a little anxiety, and a little frustration when it's time to use it, to step into it, to access it. Is it that fiery red, bold, courageous, decisive? Is it that sunshine yellow that represents your least preferred, that engaging, energetic, outgoing? Is it earth green? Is it patience, genuine, caring, and concern? Or is it cool blue that represents your least preferred? Structure, systems, process. Leave your response in the comments below. I can't wait to engage a conversation about your least preferred energy. Thanks for hanging out and hanging in with me. Until next time, embrace your day fully.